The wind curled dry dust across the cracked parking lot of the Lone Pine Diner, just off Route 57. It was the kind of forgotten stretch that most drivers passed at 70 miles an hour without looking back, unless they were desperate for gas, coffee, or quiet. Ella Grant wasn't looking for any of those. She was running from something else entirely. But she stopped anyway. The place looked exactly like a postcard from 1982, sun-faded signs, a rusting Coca-Cola bench, and a weather-beaten diner with a jukebox that hadn't played a tune in decades. Ella was about to head inside when she saw him. A German Shepherd lay beneath the diner's "Open 6 a.m. to 10 p.m." sign, his fur dappled with sunlight and dust. He was lean, alert, and silent. His eyes followed every car that passed, every truck that thundered down the highway. But he never moved from his spot. Ella paused. Something about the dog, maybe it was the rigid stillness, or the look in his eyes that didn't match the rest of him, made her lower her sunglasses. He didn't glance at her. He was watching the road. Inside, the scent of burnt coffee and fried eggs hit her in a wave of nostalgia. The waitress, a woman with graying hair and a smoker's laugh, greeted her like she'd been coming for years. "Coffee?" "Sure," Ella said. "And whose dog is that out front?" The waitress raised an eyebrow. "You mean Ranger?" "Ranger," Ella repeated. "That's what folks call him. Ain't really anyone's. He showed up here 4 years back. Just sits there, waiting." "Waiting for what?" The waitress shrugged. "Someone who's not coming back, far as we know." Ella took her coffee to a corner booth, the words clinging to her mind like fog. She kept glancing through the window. The dog hadn't moved an inch. 15 minutes later, as she left, she approached him slowly. "Hey, buddy," she murmured, kneeling a few feet away. "Are you lost?" The dog flicked his ear but didn't look at her. His gaze stayed glued to the road. Ella was no stranger to stories. She'd made her living chasing them across the country, writing for blogs, independent sites, anyone who'd pay. She specialized in oddities, emotional profiles, lost people, forgotten places. And this dog, sitting in the same spot every day for 4 years, this was a story waiting to be told. She pulled out her phone, framed the shot carefully, and snapped a photo. The caption came instinctively. "Every day for 4 years, this German Shepherd waits in the same spot near a rural diner. Locals say he appeared after a crash down the highway. He never begs, never leaves, just waits. Who is he waiting for?" She posted it to her blog and cross-shared to Instagram, Facebook, and a few Reddit threads she frequented. It took less than an hour to get the first ping. By the time she reached her motel room just a few miles down the road, her phone had started to buzz. "Redheart, this breaks my heart. Paw Prince, where is this? Someone has to help him. I've seen this dog before." Puzzle piece, there was a car crash on Route 57 around 2019. A woman and child died, I think. Ella's eyes narrowed. She scrolled through her notifications until one comment caught her attention. No name. No profile photo. Just a line. "I know this dog. And I know what he saw." A chill ran down her spine. She clicked on the profile. Nothing. No location. No history. She tried to reply, "Who are you? What do you mean?" But the comment had already been deleted. Ella stared at her screen, suddenly aware of how quiet her motel room had become. The hum of the fridge was the only sound. She looked at the photo again. The dog. Ranger. Sitting in the dust like a stone monument. Waiting. She couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just tripped over something important. Like an old root buried under years of dirt and silence. She hadn't planned on staying in this town. But stories like this didn't happen by accident. The next morning, she was back at the diner. The cook, Ricky, was outside on a smoke break, watching the dog from the step. "You the girl from the internet?" he asked. "I guess I am," Ella said. "He still hasn't moved?" Ricky shook his head. "Comes and goes sometimes. Drinks from the creek behind the diner. But always ends up here again. Never gets in a car. Not even animal control could catch him. 4 years, you said? 4 winters, 4 summers. Doesn't matter the weather. Folks leave out food, but he's picky. Won't take handouts. People tried to adopt him. He'd run. He's waiting for someone. I think he believes if he just stays long enough, they'll come back for him. Ella crouched again in front of Ranger. This time, he looked at her, briefly. His eyes were deep brown, rimmed in age and understanding. There was pain in them, but something else too. Hope. Someone should have come for you, she whispered. That afternoon, she returned to the highway where the crash supposedly happened. A mile down the road, she saw it, a worn wooden cross partially hidden by wild grass, bent from weather, marked with faded initials. H.M. A stuffed toy lay at the base, rotting from time. She stood there a long time. A storm was coming. She could feel it. Back in her car, she opened her blog dashboard. The post had crossed 40,000 views overnight. Someone had linked it to a true crime forum. People were speculating, digging, remembering. Ella's fingers hovered over her keyboard before typing. Update: there was a crash. A mother and child reportedly died. But I found only one roadside memorial. No mention of a child's name. And no record I can find of any dog listed in the official report. Ranger was there. But the real question is, what did he see? She hit publish. Then, her phone buzzed again. Another comment. Same blank account. Same eerie tone. He saw what no one else did. You're close. Don't stop. Ella stared out the diner window as the rain began to fall, soft and relentless. Ranger hadn't moved. She whispered, "What are you trying to tell me, boy?" Outside, the German shepherd didn't flinch. He was waiting. Still waiting. The next morning, Ella stood by the crash site, wind pulling at her coat, the road humming with passing trucks. She'd barely slept. Her mind kept circling the same loop. Ranger, the roadside memorial, and that strange anonymous message. You're close. Don't stop. Her gut, trained after years of following dead-end leads, told her this wasn't noise. There was a thread here. A loose one. And it wanted pulling. She dug deeper. Inside the county clerk's office, she scrolled through microfilm like she was in a movie. The crash from December 2019 had barely made local headlines. A woman named Hannah McBride, 32, was confirmed dead at the scene. The vehicle had skidded off the highway during an ice storm, hit a tree, and rolled into a ditch. Fire crews pulled her out the next morning. But Ella caught something strange in the coroner's report. Passenger, 1 adult female. Seat belt engaged. No other remains discovered. Note: child car seat present in rear compartment. Empty upon recovery. She blinked. There it was, an absence recorded in official ink. No follow-up. No secondary search logs. Just a cold statement and a quiet vanishing. She leaned back, heart pounding. The file read like a story half erased. Outside, the wind screamed through the parking lot. Back at the diner, Ricky was pouring coffee with his usual scowl when she stormed in. "You ever hear of a woman named Hannah McBride?" He raised an eyebrow. "Sounds vaguely familiar. What about her?" "She's the one who died in that crash 4 years ago. SUV. I found her name in the records. But there's no mention of a child. Except for an empty car seat." Ricky frowned. "Wait, yeah. I remember now. Folks said she had a kid. A little boy, I think. Cute as a button. No one ever found him." Ella shook her head. "Not officially. And there's no record of Ranger in the crash report either. Not a single word." Ricky exhaled slowly. "Well, he was there. I saw him. The morning after. Sitting right next to the wreck, soaked and covered in mud. Animal control tried to pick him up, but he ran off. Then reappeared the next week right here, and never left. That tracked." Ella walked outside, phone in hand, and knelt beside Ranger. His ears perked slightly. "You were there," she whispered. "You saw it all, didn't you?" The wind shifted. And just for a second, the old shepherd looked at her. Really looked. Not through her. But at her. and then he stood up. Ella blinked. He trotted off toward the back of the diner, paws crunching over dry brush. She followed, uncertain, through the trees behind the lot. The ground sloped downward into a narrow creek bed lined with scattered stones. Ranger sniffed a few places, circled, and then stopped beneath a crumbling tree stump half hidden by moss and tangled grass. Ella's boots sank slightly as she knelt. She reached into the soil. Her fingers brushed something small and stiff. She pulled it out gently, a faded child's shoe, weather-worn and brittle with time. The design barely visible, but still clear enough to make her chest ache. Red lightning bolt, Velcro strap, a little boy's shoe. She stumbled back, heart hammering. Ranger sat beside her again. Watching. Waiting. That night, Ella uploaded the photo. No filters. No words. Just the shoe, resting in her palm, next to the tree roots and wet leaves. The post exploded. Within hours, hundreds of thousands of shares flooded in. True crime forums dissected every pixel. Commenters zoomed in. A woman from Indiana claimed she remembered seeing a child's missing flyer at a Walmart near that town 4 years ago. Another user posted a screenshot of a local news ticker from 2019 with a mention, "Crash survivor still unaccounted for." And then came the email. Subject: "This case was closed too fast." From edward.mckinley.retired@nxtmail.net. Ella. Name's Edward McKinley. Retired state trooper. I worked that stretch of road a lot in my day. That crash? Always bothered me. I've got copies of the original site photos. Ones they didn't keep in the public file. The dog. Ranger. He was in them. Sitting right there. By the wreckage. You free to talk? Ella didn't wait. McKinley's house sat on the edge of a wooded ridge, about 15 miles out. He opened the door before she even knocked. A tall man in his 60s with a crooked nose and sharp eyes that looked like they hadn't missed a detail in decades. He led her to his den, lined with case files and newspaper clippings. He handed her a folder. Inside were 6 high-resolution prints. Wreckage, snow, bent metal, tree bark shredded from the impact. And in the corner of every frame, Ranger. Younger than, coat fuller, but unmistakable, sitting by the car like a sentinel. She must have died on impact, McKinley muttered. But the timing never added up. Tire marks showed a sudden veer, not a slide. No sign of braking either. You think it wasn't an accident? I think someone wanted it to look like one. Ella looked up, throat dry. And the kid? McKinley looked away. We searched. But after a few days, priorities shifted. It wasn't protocol to keep it going. Ella stared at the photos again. You think Ranger stayed all these years because the kid survived? I don't know, McKinley said quietly. But I think the dog does. That night, Ella sat in her motel room with the photos scattered across the bed. The soft tap of Ranger's paws filled her ears like a ghostly echo. She kept returning to the creek, to the shoe, and to the idea that someone or something had buried the truth. Another ping. Same anonymous account. Ask about the father. Ella's heart froze. There was no mention of a father in the official report. No family listed. But suddenly the absence felt deliberate. She opened the case file again. Searched deeper. An old DMV record. Jared McBride. Last known address, Colorado Springs. Filed a police report in late 2019 claiming his wife and child had disappeared. Not died. Disappeared. And one final note in a forgotten archive. Filed custody petition days before the crash. The breath caught in Ella's throat. Ranger didn't just lose someone. He'd seen what happened. And maybe, just maybe, he was still trying to tell the world. The sun hadn't yet risen when Ella packed her gear and returned to the diner. Ranger was already there, sitting like a statue at his usual place by the door. His eyes found her instantly, calm, expectant, as though he'd been waiting just for her. She crouched next to him. "Show me," she whispered. Ranger stood, shook out his fur, and turned toward the tree line behind the lot. This time, Ella didn't hesitate. She followed the dog through brambles and frostbitten weeds, deeper than she'd gone before. The terrain shifted into a steeper incline, and the path narrowed, half hidden under rotting leaves. Branches clawed at her jacket, but Ranger moved with purpose, steady, silent, sure. After nearly 20 minutes, they reached a small rise. At the top sat the remnants of an old hunting cabin, sagging from time and neglect. Its roof was partially collapsed, but the front door hung intact. Ranger stopped, ears raised. Ella's heartbeat quickened. The cabin looked long abandoned, just another relic swallowed by the forest. But Ranger stood by it like a soldier on post. She stepped forward. The air inside was sharp with dust and decay. Light filtered through broken slats, catching on cobwebs and motes of dirt. Her boots creaked on warped floorboards as she slowly made her way to a small corner where the shadows seemed to thicken. And there, under a faded flannel blanket, was a pile of drawings. Childlike. Stick figures and animals. Crude sketches of a dog. One page showed a tall figure holding hands with a small boy. Another, in bold crayon, had one word etched above a house and 2 trees. Luke. Ella inhaled sharply. A journal lay beneath the drawings, its pages brittle, stained with age and moisture. She flipped through it gently. Scrawled in uneven handwriting were fragmented entries. He doesn't talk, just stares. But he eats when the dog eats. Storm came. Tried to take us out. Dog barked all night. I'm not ready to go back. Not yet. Too dangerous. Ella froze at one particular line. They said she wouldn't leave him. I had to make her. She closed the journal, hands trembling. This wasn't just a child's refuge. Someone had hidden Luke here. Someone who knew what happened. Outside, Ranger stood alert, tail low, pacing in the snow-dusted dirt. She followed his gaze. Just beyond the cabin, beside a dead tree stump, lay a newer trail, boot prints partially fresh. Not hers. She wasn't alone. By mid-afternoon, Ella and Ranger were back at the diner. She was on her second cup of coffee, scanning her notes, when a black pickup truck pulled into the lot. A man stepped out. Mid-40s. Tall, weathered face, salt and pepper stubble. He moved with the hesitation of someone carrying years of grief. He walked straight up to her. "You're the journalist," he said. "Ella Grant." She nodded warily. "And you are?" "Jared McBride." His voice cracked on the last name. "I saw the post. The dog. I recognized him right away. That's Ranger. My son's dog." He sat down across from her, hand trembling slightly as he reached into his coat and pulled out a folded photograph. A woman, a boy around 5 years old, and Ranger. All smiling. All alive. Ella's throat tightened. "That's Luke." Jared nodded. "My son. Hannah, my ex-wife, took him and disappeared right before our custody hearing. I filed missing persons, hired investigators, everything. Then they told me she died in an accident on Route 57. No mention of a boy. No remains. Just nothing. But you didn't believe them." "No." Hannah was scared. She thought someone was after her. She didn't trust the system. Thought I couldn't protect Luke. Ella hesitated. Why would she run? Jared exhaled. Luke's epilepsy. He'd had a bad seizure weeks before she left. She thought it was triggered by something environmental. Convinced herself people were watching us. She became paranoid. She thought she had to disappear to keep him safe. Ella leaned forward. "Do you think she crashed on purpose?" "I don't know. But I know she wouldn't have left Luke alone. If she was still alive after that crash, even for minutes, she'd have told someone where he was." Ella reached into her bag and placed the crayon drawings on the table. Jared stared. His hands shook as he traced the bold red letters, Luke. Tears welled in his eyes. "That's his handwriting." Ella placed the journal next to him. "There's more. I think someone took Luke after the crash. Someone who didn't want him found. But Ranger, he stayed. For 4 years. Waiting. Guiding. Jared buried. Snow had begun to fall again, light, swirling flakes carried on a cold wind, as Ella stood beside Jared at the trail's edge. Ranger trotted ahead, then looked back impatiently, urging them forward with that same unspoken command that had brought Ella this far. The old hunting cabin loomed ahead like a memory frozen in time. Jared stopped the moment he saw it. "I know this place," he said, voice hoarse. "We used to come out here when I was a kid. My uncle's old property. I hadn't thought about it in decades." Ella nodded. "Ranger led me here yesterday." They pushed the door open. Ranger didn't hesitate. He moved with the determination of a guide who had made this journey 1,000 times in his mind. Jared walked the room slowly, his fingers grazing the rotting wood, eyes taking in the drawings still pinned under a rock. He picked one up, crayon scribbles of a boy and a dog sitting under a tree. "That's his style," Jared whispered. "He always used red. Said it was the bravest color." Ella watched him closely. "Jared, he's out there, isn't he?" Before he could answer, Ranger gave a sharp bark and darted out the back door, into the woods. They ran after him. The trees opened into a narrow clearing beside the creek, shielded from wind by a wall of rock. A makeshift shelter, little more than a tarp and stacked logs, sat wedged between the earth and stone. A tiny trail of smoke rose from behind it. And then they heard it. A child's cough. Jared froze. "Luke!" Another cough. Then the soft rustle of movement. Ranger barked again, tail wagging furiously now, circling the shelter but not entering. His body trembled with energy, but he remained on the threshold, waiting. Ella stepped forward first, her voice low but steady. "Luke? My name's Ella. You're safe now." Silence. Then, the flap of the tarp moved. A small, pale face peeked out. Dirt-smudged cheeks. Eyes far older than they should have been. And beneath the grime, a resemblance unmistakable. "Daddy?" the boy whispered. Jared stumbled forward as though struck. "Luke." In a blur, he knelt, arms open. Luke hesitated only a second before running into them, collapsing into his father's embrace. "I waited," the boy choked. "Ranger said you'd come." Jared pulled him close, sobbing into his son's hair. "I'm here. I'm so sorry. I'm here." Ella turned away, letting them have their moment as tears blurred her vision. Ranger sat beside them quietly, tail sweeping the ground in slow, satisfied arcs. Later, the truth unraveled in pieces, like a slow-falling curtain revealing a fractured stage. Luke had survived the crash, thrown from the vehicle, protected by his car seat and tangled brush. Hours passed before help came, but it wasn't first responders who found him. It was David Langley, a reclusive survivalist who had lived off the grid for years. A man who believed the world was full of poison and lies. He took the boy, convinced he was saving him from the system. He had known Hannah. She had once written articles for fringe survivalist sites. They had met online years ago. When he found Luke, unconscious but alive, he believed it was fate. He never hurt the boy, but he never tried to return him either. Instead, he raised him in isolation, taught him to fear strangers, told him the world had moved on, that no one remembered him, that everyone else had died. But Ranger never gave up. He found his way back to the diner, to the edge of the world where people might still be looking. And he waited, day after day, year after year. Luke's return made headlines around the world. A missing boy reunited after 4 years thanks to his dog. News crews swarmed the town. Ella declined interviews. She didn't need the spotlight. The story had told itself. Ranger's image, stoic, watchful, noble, became the face of loyalty. Artists painted him. Statues were proposed. But he remained the same old dog, sitting quietly beside Luke, always at his side. Ella visited them one last time before heading out. Luke, now freshly bathed, in clothes too big for his small frame, played with a toy truck on the floor while Jared made tea. "Thank you," Jared said, his voice full. "You gave me my son back." Ella smiled. "It wasn't me." She looked at Ranger, curled up on a rug by the window, eyes half closed in contentment. It was him. That night, she wrote her final post. 4 winters ago, a car went off the road. A woman died. A boy vanished. And a dog refused to move on. He waited in snow, in thunder, in blistering heat. He ignored strangers, fled rescuers, turned down food, because he was waiting for someone who mattered. And in doing so, he gave the world a miracle. Ranger didn't just find a boy. He found our faith again. She paused, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Then she typed one last line. Sometimes love doesn't leave. It just waits until you're ready to be found. She hit publish. Outside, the wind was picking up again, carrying with it the scent of pine and snow. And in a quiet house, lit by soft firelight, a boy slept soundly for the first time in years, one hand resting gently on the fur of the dog who never gave up on him.